What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with a SWAC Week 9 recap, man. And we had a bunch of action that we got to cover today. But first, if you're new, hit that like button and go ahead and smash that subscribe button for literally daily college football content, other than Saturdays. I know y'all are all busy at the games anyway. But man, we got the most and best college football content out there, all levels of college football for y'all. But man, we got to head to Baton Rouge, man. I've been dying to talk about this game. Southern pulls off the huge upset win over Alcorn in Baton Rouge, 38 to 35, where freshman Luke Jackson hit the game-winning 47-yard field goal as time expired. This was not only the game winner, but also a career high, and honestly could have, breathed a little bit of life into a Southern team that a lot of people, including myself, counted out this weekend because I didn't know if they were going to respond well to what happened last week against PV, and they showed that they still got it and can pull out a big win when needed, and it keeps their I'll call them pipe dreams. It keeps their long shot dreams for the SWAC championship alive. They still have to win out and get some help down the stretch, but this weekend, especially after everyone, I mean, everyone in Baton Rouge had Jason Rollins' bags packed. He found a way to get a signature win against a huge divisional opponent in Alcorn. Now, listen, Alcorn definitely still controls their own destiny. They just have to win out potentially. But this game really and truly now makes every other game down the stretch a must win. And that this was a game that it really hurt them to lose at this point in the season, because now when you have a Jackson State team coming up, you have a Prairie View team coming up, those games are going to be so high pressure for Alcorn now, because now you can't misstep and lose another game. Like this was your one mulligan. Now you got to win out. So big loss for Alcorn here this weekend, but neither defense showed up, man. Both teams put up over 440 yards of total offense. Both team averaged over 5 yards per play, and it really came down to who had the ball last and could anybody step up in a key moment, and that turned out to be Southern down the stretch with the big last-minute field goal, but also questionable special teams calls. If you're Alcorn, why are you squib kicking it to give Southern a short field to drive down and get a? They only had to drive, I believe it was like 38 yards to get a field goal. Dude, what are you thinking in that moment? I know you don't want to risk a kickoff return possibly or whatever, but why would you purposely give them a short field? You have to have enough trust in your coverage team to go make a play in that moment. So really and truly, very, very questionable decisions down the stretch for Alcorn there, especially after they fought all the way back late in that game. But let's start with Southern, man. It was a day of redemption for this passing attack after their struggles last weekend. And the rushing attack was still solid, another near 200-yard performance. But the number one thing for me was how the offense responded in crunch time and in key moments with the game on their line to keep their season potentially alive. Now, the passing attack had one of their best performances. And for me, I think Bubba McDaniel really solidified himself as the guy at quarterback. Yes, Ladarius Skelton is an athlete. There should be packages, other positions that he can fit into your scheme in. But right now, McDaniel's ability to pass is just far superior to what Skelton brings at the quarterback spot. And also, McDaniel showed some playmaking ability this weekend in key moments. 20 of 34, 250 through the air, a passing touchdown, and still rushed for over 50 yards, which was second highest on Southern this weekend. And he made play after play for Southern this weekend, and it resulted, it culminated in his 18-yard touchdown pass to Marquise McLean to extend their lead late in the fourth quarter. And then the key throw, man, 3rd and 15, he throws it 42 yards to Khalif Cassette, and Cassette goes up and makes a play for him. But for Bubba to put that ball in a position for Cassette to make that play in that key moment, you've got to give him credit. He was able to extend plays with his leg. McDaniel had a solid game this weekend, and that was really a key factor in Southern pulling this win out, because last week the quarterbacks did not come to play against Prairie View's defense. But the rushing attack, man, over 190 on the ground. They didn't show the explosiveness, but I do want to say I credit Rollins and Zach Grossley, the offensive coordinator, for sticking with their game plan too many teams, and I see it at the Power 5 level too, they abandon the run when it's, kind of working, but it's not working at the level you want it to. So you look, if you're not averaging 5, 6 yards a carry, they just kind of forget it and they put it through the air too much. But Southern didn't do that. They stuck to the game plan. They ran it over 50 times. And so it kept them in third and manageables, and it controlled the pace of the game and controlled the clock. That is the key. Even if it's not working at the level you want, if it's working a little bit, stick with it, and it's eventually going to kind of get into his rhythm, which it did. Gerard Sims, a running back, 74 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns, while Kobe Dillon still had over 50 yards rushing. Both of them only averaged about 3.5 yards per carry, but both of them were productive enough down the stretch and in the red zone that it worked for Southern. And I mentioned third and manageable because the Jags converted on 14 of their 20 third down attempts this weekend, and that played a huge role in how Southern wore down this Alcorn defense throughout the game, played a giant role in how they controlled the pace of the game. Because when you kind of break down, and I went back and watched this game again, as I caught the second half, went back and watched the first half. 4 of Southern's 6 scoring drives were 10 or more plays, and that included a 17 and 19 play scoring drive. Both took over 5 minutes off the clock, and it really killed any Alcorn momentum because you know how it feels. You go down there and score, you're pumped up, you're like, let's just get a stop. Man, do you know how just defeating it is to watch a team go 20 plays down the field on you? It took any wind out of any sales, in of the sales of this Braves team. So for me, that was really a big key for Southern. And I want to say this. Let's give them some proper credit on this win. And, yes, there were some people saying all the defenses play atrocious. I've already mentioned that. But let me say this. If I told anyone watching this video on Friday that Alcorn would, one, outrush Southern, two, Felix Harper would throw 4 touchdowns and not have a turnover, and Alcorn would play a fairly clean game and their offense would put up, over 400 yards of total offense, anyone watching would have put their life savings on Alcorn in this game. And Southern found a way to win a game that didn't really play in their favor in terms of what the strategies were and what the game plans were. So you have to give Rollins and the Southern team a lot of credit for finding a way to win this particular game. On the Alcorn side, the Braves couldn't afford to lose this game, like I said, but the Braves offense isn't at fault here. I mean, they did all they could. The defense just could not muster up a stop, and it really cost them the game. I mean, the Alcorn offense could not play any better unless they scored on like every single drive they had. All they needed was 1 or 2 stops by their defense, and they couldn't do it as they put up almost 450 of total offense. Harper played a great game. 4 touchdowns, averaged 10 yards per carry for almost 80 yards on the ground. Harper made play after play. Nico Duffy went for over 120, averaging over 7 yards per carry in the touchdown. And Bowler and Pringle combined for over 100 yards and 3 of Alcorn's touchdowns this weekend, too. So these guys, all the stars for Alcorn, played their best game. Just the number one thing on the defensive side of the ball was, one, pressure to the quarterback. They did not generate any pressure on the quarterback. 0 sacks, only 1 QB hurry on Saturday night down there in Baton Rouge. And they just failed to make this offense one-dimensional. That's something Prairie View did very well. They said, listen, you're not going to throw the ball on us. What you're going to have to do is run it down our throats, and they did a nice job of being able to game plan against that. But for Alcorn, they let McDaniel get loose through the air. They let them get loose on the ground per se, just grind it out. They couldn't get off the field on third downs, and so that kind of contributed to Alcorn's loss this weekend. But huge win for Southern, but they look to continue their miracle run to the SWAC championship with a huge game in Baton Rouge again next weekend as FAMU comes to town with that stingy defense and what's left of that offense and Bishop Bonnet in that running game. While the Braves look to rebound from this as they travel to face Bethune-Cookman, still looking for their first win. So it should be a nice, chance to get a win before that stretch run for Alcorn later this season. But we got to go to Mississippi now, where Jackson State escaped with a 28-19 win over Mississippi Valley State. And it was a very interesting game. One, field was atrocious. Announcers were atrocious. Camera angles were atrocious. It was hard to watch, to be completely honest with you guys. That's got to improve some way somehow. That was a horrible display by Mississippi Valley State this weekend. I know Jackson State fans were talking about that. I agree with you. That was tough to watch, but this was a one-score game early in the fourth quarter, and the defense found enough plays to win this game. And I also want to say, before we get right into the game, all thoughts and prayers and everything are sent out to Coach Prime and his family as he deals with some health issues that I heard hospitalized him before the game too. So wishing for a speedy recovery for him, man. Definitely want to see him back on the sidelines for Jackson State very soon, man. But listen, for the Tigers, exact same formula they do week in and week out. You lean on this defense that's number one in the SWAC still. You lean on Shador Sanders as he carries the offense, and then you find a way to win. The running attack didn't show up, but the number one thing that I saw this weekend was that Jackson State can win a sloppy game. They finally faced some real adversity. Shador threw 2 picks. They had a muff punt. Mississippi Valley has some short fields, and Jackson State still found a way to win. So I think you have to give them credit for overcoming some real adversity on the road in a game that many people thought was going to be a blowout. So for it to be this close and Jackson State to respond with a win is impressive enough. But you look at the offense, less than 300 total yards, 3 turnovers, and it really kept Valley in late. But I wanted to see this, and I finally got to see it. I've been saying I wanted to see how Shador responded to real adversity. And for me, he passed this weekend with flying colors on the road. He has 2 big picks. The offense isn't doing well. It's a one-score game. Valley has a chance to really put this game in I guess, danger mode for Jackson State. And what does Shador do? He comes back with 3 passing touchdowns, over 250 through the air, and he just made play after play. And I've said this on the show for 2-3 weeks that the Sanders' potential in this offense is through the roof, man. But he doesn't get a single lick of help from his offensive line or running game. And it's allowing defenses to really hone in on stopping him. And I think that forced some mistakes this weekend with the 2 picks, but I really loved how he responded to throwing 2 interceptions. He shook them off and made some big throws, including a big one to Rucker. Wadman had another big day. Lanier had a big day. Shador responded well to the adversity for a freshman. I was very excited and happy to see that, because I was very interested in seeing how he did that. But the problems with the offense are clear, man. The offensive line and running attack is mind-blowing to me how bad they are right now. They had their main guys back weekend. They got Tony Gray back. They got some of those other guys back, and they still failed to win the line of scrimmage. I mean, this has been a reoccurring problem every single week except the Alabama A&M game. They have much improved. They had much improved pass blocking this week, and I would say 2 sacks allowed. Still would like to see a bit better, but that's okay with me. But they allowed almost 10 tackles for loss to Mississippi Valley State, and they only had 30 rushing yards this weekend, averaging 1.3 yards per carry, which is the second straight week that they've rushed for 30 yards or less, and the third time this season going back to the ULM game. This has to improve. If you're going to go and win the SWAC championship, win the Celebration Bowl, have playoff aspirations, you cannot go into any of those games with this offensive line playing like this with the run game. And this has to improve. And they are so lucky that Shador is the type of player he is, because he is dragging this offensive line and running game with him to the promised land right now. If Shador Sanders wasn't the quarterback for Jackson State, they would be in trouble. But the defense and Shador Sanders have saved this team week in and week out. So that's why, for me, I said on the roundtable, Shador Sanders should be SWAC Player of the Year, because as much as you could say Akil Glass isn't getting help, Shador Sanders ain't getting a lick of help from the rest of his offense other than the wide receivers. He ain't getting no blocking. He isn't getting a running attack. I mean, at least Gary Quarles can run for 100 yards a game. So for me, that's got to be fixed. But Shador Sanders, even though he threw 2 picks, I was extremely happy to see how he responded to the adversity. But one position group that has consistently improved week in and week out is the wide receiving core. This was a huge week for these guys, and this unit is going to be terrifying moving forward into SWAC play. I mean, Malachi Wadman, another 4 catches, another touchdown, 66 yards receiving. Lanier had a touchdown, a big breakout game after, he was kind of banged up, 62 yards on 6 catches, and Rucker had that huge touchdown catch for 74 yards in which he just burned this defense. The wide receivers of Shedeur Sanders are becoming the identity of this offense. And man, it is a dangerous connection. I really think Wadman right now is establishing himself as one of the best wide receivers in the SWAC. This kid is legit. I told y'all on this show back when he committed that he was going to be a problem, and he's finally proven me right. He's already one of the leaders in the SWAC in receiving touchdowns, and he's only played like 3-4 games. Malachi Wadman's a problem when you combine him with Lanier underneath with that speed and Rutgers playmaking ability, and then you still have Corbin, who didn't have a great game, but he's still a factor. I mean, you have 3-4 guys that can go make plays any given weekend. So Jackson State's wide receivers are legit. Now, Mississippi Valley, they shouldn't hang their head. I mean, I thought they played extremely well. They played very tough against this Jackson State team. It's just they made too many mistakes down the stretch to win this game, and the offense could not get it going late. But Jackson State's defense held them to under 250 total yards, only 3 of 14 on third downs, and forced 5 turnovers. And they allowed way too many explosive plays to Jackson State, including that Rucker play. But Eason, four interceptions, only had 1 touchdown for only 125 through the air. The MVP, though, Caleb Johnson, had himself a day, 119 on the ground, a rushing touchdown, and almost 5 yards per carry. He had a great day against this Jackson State defense. The problem was there was no consistency in the passing game, and Jackson State secondary absolutely ate against this offense in Mississippi Valley, man. And Caleb Brunson and Markel Gladney had big games on the defensive side of the ball. Both got interceptions, combined for 10 tackles. I mean, Mississippi Valley played extremely hard, but until this team can clean up some mistakes, the games like these are going to slip away. You cannot beat Jackson State turning the ball over 5 times, not having a consistent passing game. That's not how you can beat Jackson State, man. You have to be able to at least move the ball efficiently. They have their opportunities. Jackson State shut them down. I was impressed with the pass rush again from Jackson State. Niles Gaddy had a big game. Houston was a factor as always. Owens also was a huge factor as well. I mean, this Jackson State defense just keeps proving week in and week out that they're a problem in that front seven. So for me, those were the biggest things this weekend in Urbana when Jackson State pulled this game out. But the Tigers head back to the Vet to face Texas Southern next weekend in a very, very interesting game with Andrew Body coming in, while Mississippi Valley heads to Huntsville to take on Alabama A&M in a very big SWAC game. But let's talk about A&M here, man. They get an important SWAC win over Alabama State in the Magic City Classic, 42-28, man. I mean, this was a big one for both of these teams. They're fighting for that 3rd spot in the East Division, and the Bulldogs finally found a way to pull out their 4th consecutive win over the Hornets and snap their 3-game losing streak in this one. And that was huge because there was a lot of questions coming in about Akil Glass, about this offense, about Connell Maynard, and how they would respond with how bad they've been playing. The offense was impressive. It really resembled what many people predicted we would see from them coming into the season, while the Hornets hung in early, but the Bulldogs just had too much talent down the stretch for them. And also, Earshad Davis being ejected for Alabama State was a crucial loss. He was ejected for targeting, I believe, in like the 1st or 2nd quarter. But let's get into this game real quick, man. The Bulldogs leaned on their 2 biggest offensive stars. Akil Glass and Garrett Crowles had huge games. And for Alabama A&M, the defense played fairly well. I mean, they allowed their 2nd fewest points this season with 28, and it's their 2nd lowest since their 2nd overall game against Bethune-Cookman all the way back in week 3, man. So that's how impressive this defensive performance was. We got to grade these on we got to scale these grades a bit. 28 points for Alabama A&M is great. Won't be great for any other defense, but it's great for this one. And this was actually the best offensive output for A&M in multiple weeks. Finally put up over 450 total yards and had their first 40-point game, guys. Listen to this. Their first 40-point game since the 25th of September against Tuskegee. That's crazy to me. And when you look at it, Akil Glass over 300 yards passing. He averaged over 16 yards of completion, 4 touchdowns, all four to four different wide receivers, and had 5 different players with 3 or more catches. Akil Glass had arguably one of his best performances of the season to finish his career undefeated in this huge rivalry game. Gary Quarles up over 100 yards again, 2 touchdowns, averaged over 6 yards per carry. And Abdul and D. Anderson had themselves a day. Over 170 on 10 catches combined, had 2 touchdowns. They played lights out this weekend on the offensive side of the ball, and Alabama State had no answer down the stretch, and that's really why Alabama A&M pulled away. But the defense still allowed over 360. But the biggest things for them, one, they were able to get off of third downs. They held Alabama State on third downs consistently. They held them to only 14 points in the second half and got a crucial interception in the second quarter to hold the Hornets on an impressive drive that they had in the first half. So the defense played bend but don't break. They played, opportunistic football. So you have to give the defense a small amount of credit for this win. But the Hornets, they played well, but the defense could not offer any consistent execution. It put so much pressure on this offense that's not, it's not a high scoring offense. So once that score started going up and up and up, they just were not able to keep up. And they also seemed to abandon the run game a bit too early in this game. Nettles ended up with almost 40 attempts, while Ezra Gray only had 12 carries. That ended up really costing this Alabama State team. Nettles played arguably his best game of the year, 243 touchdowns, 1 pick. But Ezra Gray was averaging, guys, over almost 8 yards per carry, had almost 100 yards on just 12 attempts and a touchdown. I thought they abandoned the run way too early. The biggest things with Alabama A&M is you have to just run it down that defense's throat if you don't have a passing game. Play keep away on Akil Glass and just wear down that front seven and run the football. I really thought Ely and this offensive staff abandoned the run way too early this weekend, and that really cost them this game. But Jeremiah Hickson had a huge game at the wide receiver spot, 10 catches, 116. And Wallace Corker, man, a guy who not a lot of people have talked about this year, had 2 big touchdowns, over 70 yards in this game and 6 catches. I thought Alabama State played a fairly good game, guys. It was just, I didn't feel like their defense helped them out at all. I mean, for Alabama State to put up 40 points, even on A&M's defense, is a lot to ask. They needed 1 or 2 stops. I thought Irshad being kicked out of the game was a huge loss for them in that secondary. I mean, he's really the leader of that defense, leads them in tackles. He has the experience. So for me, that was a big loss. But Alabama A&M, man, look to establish a new winning streak against Mississippi Valley State, like we just talked about. While Alabama State has a tough road ahead, and they will have to rebound with a huge road game against Prairie View next weekend. That's going to be extremely tough for the Hornets to rebound there. And also, Off Script broke it on his show on Sunday night. Apparently, Donald Ely is out at Alabama State, so I'll probably be doing a show, probably our mailbag on Tuesday, talking about potential replacements, what they need to do, and the latest news on that. But other SWAC action, man, FAMU dominates Grambling 26-3 in Tallahassee for their homecoming. It was a defensive clinic, guys, down there. I mean, the Rattlers allowed a lone field goal, controlled the ball for almost 40 minutes. A dominant performance by FAMU. Only 10 first downs allowed, 3 for 11 on third downs, 187 total yards allowed. They allowed less than 100 yards passing and less than 4.5 yards per rushing attempt. You got to give FAMU some credit, man. They're playing some really good football down there. But a lot of people consider this a trap game, and they handled it no problem. They dominated Grambling from start to finish. Rashawn McKay played a solid game. Bishop Bonnet and the running backs did their thing, but this defense is a problem. They're still going to stay on Jackson State's heels. They're hoping Jackson State can drop 2 of these last 3 games, and if not, FAMU is going to make that run to the playoffs. I'm expecting them to jump up a little bit this week. There were some people in front of them who got beaten, upset, so we'll see. Maybe they could be right out there on the fringe top 25 this week. We will see later today, but Texas Southern was the other game. They light up the scoreboard against Arkansas Pine Bluff. 59-17 win. For me, all about Andrew Body. 271 through the air, 4 passing touchdowns, 121 on the ground, a rushing touchdown, and he averaged over 7.5 yards an attempt on the ground. Andrew Body had a huge game. When you look at Texas Southern, they put up almost 600 yards of total offense. Only missed 3 third downs. Man, they were 11 for 14, had 0 turnovers. UAPB has some serious problems. If Gamble didn't have that SWAC championship appearance in the spring, he'd probably be out. I think he earned himself one more year. But man, everything from that Alcorn second half until now, everything that could go wrong for UAPB has went wrong. I thought this was a big win for Texas Southern to launch them against Jackson State. They're gonna have to play their best game of the season if they want a chance, especially in the vet. So for me, Texas Southern, this was a huge win for them with a 59-17 domination of UAPB. But the last thing here, man, let's get an early preview of our SWAC Week 10 action. First, we got Alcorn traveling to Bethune, 11 a.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus. Then you got Texas Southern traveling to Jackson State, 1 p.m. Central Time. So this wasn't listed on ESPN Plus. So I'm imagining it could be on the Jackson State Sports Network. That um, I forget which game was on that, but I think you pay like a small fee and they give you their network link or whatever. But Mississippi Valley State traveling to Alabama A&M, also at 1 p.m. Central. Alabama State to Prairie View, 2 p.m. Central Time. Also, Grambling at Arkansas Pine Bluff at 2 p.m. Central Time, live on ESPN Plus. And FAMU Southern in prime time, 6 p.m. Central Time, live on ESPN Plus. If you're looking for which games to find here on the Blue Bloods for previews, Texas Southern, Jackson State, and FAMU and Southern, with FAMU and Southern being our game of the week this weekend. But guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope y'all had a great weekend. It was an amazing weekend of college football. But man, we'll be back later today with our college football playoff outlook. We also will be covering some breaking news, and our mailbag is tomorrow. So go to our community page, submit your questions, and make sure to tune in Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, live right here on the Blue Bloods for all your mailbag questions, discussions. It'll be like an hour live stream. Hopefully, I'll see y'all there. But for right now, man, for the Blue Bloods, we are out.